Welcome back to another episode of Hawksology. I'm Jack Tresh, and we are so close. We are literally hours away from the NBA draft. And if you're a Hawks fan, hopefully you've been keeping up with all the rumors, trades, what we're going to do with our picks, etc. But nearly everything has to do with John Collins. We'll get to the rumors, the trades themselves, talking about which is the most likely, what trade, if any, would be the best. But let's figure out how we got here in the first place and talk about why exactly are we on the verge of a John Collins trade. You could have heard people say that the Hawks couldn't use him the same, that there are issues concerning his role. There's people who say he's not worth the contract. And, of course, Hawks fans love talking about what John Collins can't do. I've never heard more talk about what a player can't do. But, in fact, it seems like we have the only fan base in the league that doesn't want John Collins. But from most of what I've heard, that's because Hawks fans simply don't want a charismatic, hardworking, team-first power forward that is constantly working to improve his skills and basketball IQ, even though he can already finish at the rim athletically, shoot from everywhere on the court efficiently, and provide the perfect roll man for a guard who excels in pick-and-roll playmaking, all because, unfortunately, he cannot do a tween hezzy snatchback. So let's break this thing down, starting with why couldn't the Hawks use John Collins the same? And so, little history, as the years have gone on, what went from an elite pick-and-roll duo has slowly disappeared, that being Trae Young and John Collins. And we rarely see us get that necessary advantage off a normal pick-and-roll, which would lead us to getting that lob/floater/Trae Young switch against a big. We rarely see us getting that load of options, that big threat that we used to see in the old days. Teams have decided now that Trae Young is too dangerous handling the ball in a pick and roll, so they constantly throw hard hedges and traps to get the ball out of his hands. The Hawks have tried to counter that with running staggered screen plays, having John Collins slip the screens, running what's called a Spain pick and roll, where a third Hawk would set a down screen on whoever is guarding JC so that we could get him going downhill and create good looks for his athletic finishing abilities. But other teams countered back. With Clint Capella not being able to space the floor, his defender would be able to help out onto John Collins and prevent him from getting a clean look at the rim or even gaining any momentum downhill. So combine this with the immense amount of defensive pressure sent to make Trae Young give up the rock, and our main attack plans are turned into scarcity when it comes to scoring options in those situations. The assist networking stats from PBP stats coincide with what I'm talking about. Picture as two defenders force the ball out of Trae's hands and into John's. Of course, the defender from Clint Capella steps up, which oftentimes creates either one of those Collins to Capella alley-oops or some other opportunity for Collins to connect with the wide-open Capella down in the dunker spot. This is why John Collins has far more assists to Clint Capella than any other Hawk. 30 of his 98 assists on the season, which is over 30%, went to Clint Capella. So 30 for Clint Capella. The next highest amount was 14, which were to Deandre Hunter. Some of those would come because the help to stop JC from getting downhill would sometimes come from the weak corner, which would free Deandre Hunter up in the corner. 12 assists, that's the next highest. That's Kevin Huerter. 10 to Trae Young, 9 to Bogdan Bogdanovic, and etc. So how about a quick film breakdown just so y'all can see exactly what I'm talking about, how we get those Collins to Capella, Collins to Hunter looks, and notice how all of these plays start with a Trae Young, John Collins pick and roll, that John Collins will slip the screen, and notice the immense amount of defensive pressure, whether being a hedge or trap, that teams put on Trae Young, which kind of frees up some space for us to operate. Here in this first play versus the Magic, it's exactly that. Chuma Okeke is going to come and hedge on Trae Young. Collins slips the screen, allowing for a nice pocket pass to a Capella alley-oop. And let's watch that again a bit slower. Collins, you see, doesn't actually fully set the screen on Cole Anthony. Starts the downhill, and Trae Young, a maestro with those pocket passes. Wendell Carter steps up, and Capella right in the dunker spot, like I was telling y'all. And that's how we get those Collins-Capella alley-oops. On to the next play versus the Minnesota Timberwolves, and a lot of the same thing here. Defender's gonna trap Trae almost at half court. Collins slips the screen, gets downhill. Naz Reid commits, and it's a Capella lob. I really like how we're getting into the bag, kind of understanding how defenses are going to counter. Because notice as John goes to set the screen for Trae, Clint Capella is setting a flare screen for TLC to pop out in the corner. What the Timberwolves are doing here is essentially having Malik Beasley play the passing lane and Capella so that if Naz Reid has to commit, which he does, that there's a chance they could either deny the corner pass to TLC or deny the lob to Capella. And Malik Beasley is kind of there, but he's not really the guy you want for that. Let's watch it in full motion. You can see the timing of everything. Collins slips the screen, gets downhill, and Malik Beasley is just too far behind him, but too small to even fight for a position against Clint Capella. Onto this next play versus the Pacers. I really love here how Collins doesn't even actually go up and set the screen, just gives Torrey Craig a little shove so he can get a little space to go downhill. Bitadze commits to Collins, and Capella's all free for an alley-oop. So let's run this through in real speed. I really like to think of John Collins' little shove on Torrey Craig as the equivalent to slipping the screen, as it gets him the space to get some momentum and draw out Goga Bitadze. Anyway, beautiful play, and Capella rolls home the lob. Another Minnesota game, same formula here. Collins is going to slip the screen as two defenders commit to Trae, force the ball out of his hands. This time it's D'Angelo Russell who helps out on JC, and that frees up DeAndre Hunter in the corner. Notice how it's not Cat stopping the rolling John Collins, so that they don't give up another look like the other two plays we've seen where it's an alley-oop to Capella. But this time it is D'Angelo Russell that leaves his guy all alone. DeAndre Hunter splash for three. Let's see if you see the pattern by now. But interesting to point out is that Trae Young doesn't even cross half court, gives up the rock with that little pass, and Clint Capella is left all alone as Hassan Whiteside commits way too far up. I really love the immense amount of floor spacing we have on this play. There's two defenders guarding Trae at half court. And, of course, Hassan Whiteside is just left in the dust in no man's land. And it's an easy slam, Collins to Capella. One last play here against the Los Angeles Clippers. Now, this example doesn't flow as smooth as some of the ones before, but I do think it's a great example because I really like how we combat the Clippers 2-3 zone. If you look in the bottom right corner, that is me getting some content from the floor, which, if you don't know, is me wanting to release the 350 plus videos that I have taken at Hawks games this season, and you can check that out on my YouTube channel, Hawksology, of course. But let's check out the play. Collins is gonna, same thing, slip the screen. The defensive pressure goes on to Trae, but Collins, instead of rolling, is going to pop here. Zubac does a good job of rotating back to his spot where he's supposed to be in the zone, and Marcus Morris then rotates, but a little late, allows Hunter to attack his weak foot, get a step, and a nice little floater that stifles him. Let's check that out one more time as Collins slips the screen there. Batum freezes him for a second, but good pass from Collins to allow DeAndre Hunter to capitalize on Marcus Morris's late rotation. So back to the Hawks pick and roll, bread and butter being so limited, Collins, who's already one of the league's most versatile fours, tried to find another way to contribute, and this is where the rumors surrounding his role started to develop, got kind of beefy as the media portrayed it, but you have one side, Hawks management, looking at how to counter how the other teams adjusted to limit JC's most optimal attack, which oftentimes involved reducing John Collins' touches. And then on the other side, you have John Collins himself working on his game so that he could provide whatever skill was necessary to back whatever that optimal attack might be. And slowly over time, especially as he would often watch some of his teammates approach games with a lack of effort, he began to doubt his future here. Also, especially when he kept hearing the nonsensical slandering from those in the fan base who just hopped on right after the Eastern Conference Finals run. And I'm sure for him, also hearing his name in literally every single trade rumor that's come in the last year and a half, it's been tough for him. So as we are so close to the NBA draft and the Hawks are expected to move John before the draft, let's talk about these rumors, what they are. And for now, I'm going to make very brief points, especially because it's about to get hectic. Literally, as I was gathering notes for this episode, DeJounte Murray happened to tweet, "Uh-oh," with a popcorn emoji in response to a rumor that would send John Collins to San Antonio for, well, DeJounte Murray. The Spurs reportedly asked to receive a Drew Holiday-like package for the guard, which, if you don't remember, was a 4-team trade and a pretty hefty-sized package. There are rumors of us having to give up 3 first-round picks, Onyeka Okongwu, and more, as the Spurs have a pretty high price for DeJounte. And what really rattles me is that a couple seconds ago, Onyeka happened to tweet out a cryptic emoji tweet, one like a confused face. That's my best impression of that. But he hasn't tweeted in 2 weeks and decided that the middle of this pre-draft commotion was a great time to jump back on Twitter. Also, already, in case you missed it, Detroit traded Jeremy Grant to Portland for a 2025 first-round pick, which right now is just some 16-year-old. Fun fact, Detroit was interested in having a Jeremy Grant trade with us, that we would send Bogey and our 16th overall pick in exchange for Grant, but instead the 16 they got is now legit 16-year-old. But that kind of hurts the trade market for us, as the Hawks had still, whether we got him or not, been linked to Jeremy Grant before that trade went down. But anyway, a trade for DeJounte Murray would be beyond solid. If you know anything about what the Hawks were missing other than defensive effort, which we spoke about in episode 1. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. But what the Hawks were missing was a secondary playmaker / ball handler / primary scorer, and some perimeter defense. And DeJounte literally fills all those holes. In fact, having DeJounte would hopefully turn us into a really, really scary defense. Just think about a roster that includes DeJounte, Deandre Hunter, Clint Capella, and Onyeka Okongwu, if we can keep him, hopefully, and even like DeLon Wright, if we can re-sign him. But this rumor just popped out of the blue, so I'll try to keep y'all posted as to what's happening. The updates that I've seen today show the Hawks not a fan of those high prices, and also a bit skeptical about how DeJounte fits on the squad. Personally, I think DeJounte, again, as a secondary ball handler / playmaker, would take so much pressure off of Trae Young and allow him to operate off ball. It would also give us a good piece of defensive talent at the guard position that we could probably hide Trae on defense a bit better. So we'll keep y'all posted with that. But The other biggest rumor that I've been seeing is about Harrison Barnes and the Kings draft pick, whether or not we're getting that pick. The Kings look like they are not too too excited about giving us that number 4 pick. And personally, for me, if we're not getting that pick, I don't think it's worth just trading John Collins for Harrison Barnes. Like Harrison Barnes could be a great veteran option to run, but I am not sure exactly where he'd fit. Personally, I especially not playing the power forward position. Again, the main focus here would be getting that draft pick from the Sacramento Kings. I'm just not a fan of this move overall, unless we are moving that pick somewhere else. I'm also not a fan of us keeping and using our pick at number 16, and I don't think waiting for a player, whether we get them at number 4, we get them at number 16, I don't think it's worth to wait for a player to develop even a little, and I don't think that's in the interest of the team or the players. Remember, also, we barely played Jalen Johnson last season. We are so-called wanting to be in a contending playoff run type window, and the rumors of Steve Koonin saying that he would, and Tony Ressler saying that they are ready to spend whatever it takes to upgrade the roster. I don't think that's coming in the form of a rookie. So I wouldn't be surprised because even no matter who we draft, if we draft somebody, no matter how many minutes they play, I wouldn't be surprised if we see our new rookie become frustrated with an underutilized role on the team, considering how Nate McMillan has handled past young players in playoff caliber teams. I also want to address that the Hawks should absolutely pursue a PJ Tucker or a Nicholas Batum so that we can get that veteran dog presence on the court that the team heavily lacked. I always like to recall the example, and I believe it was Game 2 of the Miami Heat series in Round 1 of the playoffs, where Markieff Morris kind of kidnapped Deandre Hunter in the middle of play. Deandre Hunter was double-teamed in the corner, gave up the rock and kind of stepped back out of bounds, and Markieff Morris literally came up and hugged him, preventing him from getting back into play. It was almost a turnover until Deandre started pointing it out to the refs. But in the NBA, if someone does that, you turn around and you shove them. You don't take that stuff. We need that dog because I'm sure PJ Tucker, even having Solomon Hill back on the squad, they would have gone over and gone up to Markieff Morris and said, "Sit the F down." Adding a veteran presence that is also actually playable on the court on both ends would be a great piece to add. Also probably heard rumors about Zach LaVine, Donovan Mitchell, and Bradley Beal, and while those are secondary scoring options we could get, I would absolutely vomit due to the horrendous lack of defensive ability and probably defensive effort too. As my guy Jitty Fades on Twitter said, we don't want to become Portland East. Moving on to just quickly mention DeAndre Ayton and Rudy Gobert were also names mentioned, but the Hawks never actually specifically showed any interest in getting either of those bigs in exchange for Clint Capella, and it wouldn't make sense getting one of those bigs for John Collins and still keeping Clint Capella. Trey also reportedly is good friends. He likes Clint Capella, and so do I, because even though those flawed narrative with the bogus defensive stats crashed Clint Capella's value, I still think he's immensely valuable for us. He takes pride in doing all the dirty work in the paint, which is a very mature outlook that our players, considering our conversation about effort in the last episode, can hopefully also obtain. So, Ayton, Gobert, big nose from me. That's a whole Capella breakdown that I will do if I must. But buckle your seatbelts, people. Something with our roster is about to flip in at least one way. I'm 99% sure we saw the last of JC the Baptist as an Atlanta Hawk. And while nothing has happened yet, I've got to add that John Collins has one of the most respectable approaches to not only the game of basketball, but life in general, too. He's such a class act. You can tell in interviews, watching him play, or even when he's on the bench. Like, well, he's a dog out there, works hard, strongly values the concept of being a team and putting it all on the line to win. He's also a very down to earth, respectable, and compassionate guy, and the couple times that I've met him only confirms that more. That'll do it essentially for episode 2 of Hawksology. We got so much stuff in the works, especially with the draft, again, literally hours away. Just wanted to get this episode out there as quick as possible. And so stay in the loop. Make sure that you follow, subscribe, like, again, comment or tweet at me if you want to talk hoops. Please also, if you like what you saw here, help grow Hawksology. It's about to get crazy. So thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time.